Lojoyo sambo pagyo trashi pa tuche tempe tinle yarngoda pelge drolor zambe zebarache pande lame shabla solvade Om A Guru Vajradhara Suma Timunisha Sanekar Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om A Guru Vajra Suma Timunisha Sanekar Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om A Guru Vajra Suma Timunisha Sanekar Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhar Suma Timunisha Sane Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timunisha Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timunisha Sani Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Utta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dagi Je Tsong Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendu So Oyon Sungi Nawa Tsedu So Tseji Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Visu Lekshune Yila Sambe Dede Malupa Gemel Hungi Drupra Chingi Lo Tsoni Sodan Dikdun Shape Tse Dingi Namke Yinsu Lekshune Labchen Tsoni Yonsu Cherani Dun Changra Chingi Lo Dajala Jetsung Lame Tuje Rabgongne Kuda Sungi Nawa Drame Tu Nyamsu Nyongwe Kesan Tobrasho Kewa Kuntu Yanda Lama Dan Drame Cheki Pela Longche Chin Dorje Changi Kopa Nyurtobo Shoyo Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Lo Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Na Yerme Chiktu Chingi Lo Makyuke Kudan dagi lu ma kyuke sungdan dagi nga ma kyuke tukdan tagi ten yerme chiktu chingi lo Om Muni Mahamuni Kyamunye Soha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamunye Svoha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamunye Svoha. Cominciamo seguendo le preghiere tradizionali.
So we'll begin by following the traditional prayers that have been recited since the time of Lama Tsong Khapa. So we begin with the recitation of the Heart Sutra to eliminate any kind of interference that could be present. By interference, we mean mostly external influences that we're not able to interact well with, that could bring nervousness, distraction, tension, malaise, etc. And when we talk about eliminating external interferences, one of the fundamental aspects is not for that interference to end, but may it no longer be an interference for us. For example, if we are around someone who's very nervous, somehow that influences us. And if we're able to have our own stability where we are not affected by that tension, then that presence of that person is no longer an interference. So when we say external interferences, we're talking about external things that can bring inner states of lack of focus, aversion, whatever would not allow us to have a clear mind, a mind that would allow us to listen well to the teachings and integrate well these teachings. Inner interferences would be our sadness, our attachment, our aversions, our uncertainties within things that are within us that don't allow us to be present during the teachings. And secret interferences are things that are positive, they're good things, but that still do not allow us to follow the teachings. So we begin with the recitation of the Heart Sutra, and then there's the short version of the mantra of the lion-faced Dakini, Singhamukha, and that's when we clap our hands. From one hand, we visualize. So we have the sun and the moon in each hand, and in the middle we have the interferences, and we imagine that our fears, our uncertainties, whatever it is whatever that takes away our mental clarity, when we clap our hands, those interferences are eliminated, and then we recite the lineage prayer that shows us the uninterrupted flow of teachings that come all the way to us.
chagu pumbo rila gelongi gendun chenpo dang janchu sempe gendun chenpo dang taba chikdu shuote te tse chumdende samu nangwa she chawe chugi namdrangi dinge zinla nyombra shuoso yang te tse janchu sempa sempa chenpo pakpa chenre zi wangchu sherabaki paru tu chimpa samo cheba nila nambra tash Pumbo ngabo teta layang rang shinge tomba nambra tao tene sange ge tu denpa shari pu chanchu semba semba chem papa chere si wangjo la dike che me soya rigi pu kang la la Sheragi parotu chimba samo chepa chopra depa te chitra labra cha Teke che me padang janchu sempa sempa chenpo pakpa chenre zigi tsedan denpa shara tati pul dike che me soya shari pu rigi pu wan rigi pu kang la la sheragi parotu jimba samo chepa chopara depa te didra nambra taura chat Pumbo ngabo teta kya ran shinge tomba nambra yandakpra jesu tao su tomba wo tomba ni suk so sule tomba ni shema yin tomba ni le kya su shema yin deshin tu tsorwa dan dushe dan duche dan nambra sheba nama tomba wo sharipu Tedra che tamche tongpa nite tseni meba ma keba ma kakpa tima meba tima dan chawa tiwa kangwa meba wo sharipu teta wena tongpa nila su me tsorwa me dushe me duche na me nambra sheba me Ming me, nawa me, na me, che me, lu me, yi me, su me, dra me, tri me, ro me, rekcha me, che me, to, mi ge ka me ba ne, yi ge kama me, yi ge nambra shebe, kam ge pardo ya me to, ma rikpa me, ma rikpa seba me ba ne, gashi me, Gashe sebe pardo yame to Teshin tu dunge wadang kunchu wadang kokpadang lame yeshe me Topa me mato payame to Shari pu teta wena janju semba nam topa me bechir Sheragi paro tu jimbala tenchi net Semla dripa me chin chakpa me te chinchi lole shindu den Nyange le debe tarchin tom Tu sundu nambra shube sange tamche kyang Sheragi parotu jimbala tengne lana me bayan dabra zobe janju tu ngombra zobra sange so Teta we na sheragi parotu jimbe nga Rikpa chimbe nga lana me be nga Minyam padanyam be nga dunge tamche rabdu shivra chebe nga Mizun pena dembra shebra chate sheragi parutu chimbe nga Me paya tayata gate gate para sam gate podi svoha sharipu Chanchu sempa sempa chembo teta sheragi parutu chim Samola labra chao tene chum Dinge zin tele shende chanchu semba semba chem Pagpa chere zi wancho la lekso she chawa chingne Lekso lekso rigi pu te te shino rigi pu te te shinte Chitra kyoge tempa shindu sheragi parutu jimba samula chebra chate Deshin shekpa namgyan chesu irango Chumden dege dige che ka tsilne tsedan denpa shara tati budan chanchu semba semba chem Papa chere si wanju dan tam che dan dembe kor te da dan hada mi dan lama yin dan tisara chebe jikne irande chumden degi sumba la ngombara do. Kala chepe ne che damba na ngoshe zudru ngawe tutoba chem drupa pola mayel pushin si ne son kandro tsola cha tse lo akka samaranza shatara samaraya pe akka samaranza shatara samaraya pe akka samaranza shatara samaraya Akka samaranza shatara samaraya pe 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 akka samaranza akka samaranza shatara samaraya pe akka samaranza shatara samaraya pe akka samaranza shatara samaraya pe akka samaranza shatara akka samaranza shatara samaraya pe akka samaranza shatara samaraya pe akka samaranza shatara samaraya Akka samaranza shadara samaraya pe akka samaranza shadara samaraya pe taya ta gate gate paragat parasam gate podi svoha pakpa kuncho sumge kaye dembe topge chir do paragyurche me paragyurche shivara gyurche rapto shivara gyurche Dhage parte mi tumbe chore tamche shanti kuru ye svoha geri tongra geju shiwadang mi tunube kendan chawadang tumba drupchen punsu tsugyurupe tashi tekyan tendire dele sho. Mentre faremo adesso la
As we recite the lineage guru request blessing, we try to connect with each one of these masters so that connect with the fact that there's an experience, there's a knowledge that was transmitted in an uninterrupted way, and within there's a knowledge and experience. There's trust and love, and that's what creates this connection, keeps it alive. So we ask for the blessings of the lineage. We request the blessings of the lineage. Obviously, not all of you understand the meaning of every word, and that's not as important as the connection that we make with our heart and our mind with each one of these masters. And at a certain point, there's a very short break after, at the very end, then we ask for the blessings to be able to realize every step of the graduated path to enlightenment.
Lam Rim Chen dagi chivro pede tenshula kadrin chimbo gone jesonte kuson tuge ngodro tseduso kuson tuge ngodro tseduso tremba nyangme temba chumdende gyatsa tamba chetsu mi bangom gyawe sunde pakpa tome sha sangye chansen sumla solwade Sangye chansen sumlas Zamlin kebe tsugen yigi nye Ume lamnye pakpa namdrulde Tebe sarne tsumba namdrude Jikde mikche sumla solwade Jikde mikche sumla solwade Meju ngotsara negyuru chogide Samu lamge gyujan duwede Lapchen chube tergyu namnanze Drove tsala sumla solwade Solwade lamcho sherjin geze sensan sha Gyawe menga kunzin kusali Drogun tsewe jinzin gewache Tepun sumla solwade Drove tepun sumla Janjo tola nganye serlimpa Shinda chimbu sulzi marmeze Lamsa seze temba rinpoche, tembe sunzin sumla solwade, tembe sokshin sumla solwade, Mawa dame drenjo sharke to gyawe kera kundu chambe yang samu tunse pakcho ludru sha mawe tsugen sumla solwade mawe tsugen sumla solwade pakpe gomba seze dawa cha tese tuwo rikpe kuchu che gyase rikpe kugyu nibe sha rikpe wangchu sumla Rikpe wangchuk sumla solwade, dendre samo chishin sikpa yi, shinda chimba sulze marmeze, lamsa seze tumba rinpoche, zamli gengyur nila solwade, zamli gengyur nila solwade, neljura wangcho palden gomba pa, samo tinze tembe seurupa, duba denu sungye tamapa, Tako drume sumla sowa deba takoba drume sumla sowa de Tsumbe druba lule namsen sha tambe chila namka gyabo dang Jikden chöge pangbe senge san gyase sangbe shabla solwa de Gyase sangbe shabla solwa de Chancho tuge drugun pushin si Pakbe lhayi jesan chinge lab Nikto drowa drembes Namke gensen shabla solwa de Namka gensen shabla solwa de Gyawe dungsa shenye chim Nemcho drenda drawe sharawa Jancho tugi kababa chekawa Drowa regun sumla solwa de Drove regun sumla solwa de Londo ngada chanse chibu pa Time lunge wangchu kebe cho Kamson drove gombo rinpoche Neden chimbu sumla solwa de Neden chimbu sumla solwa de Namda tsultrim ngedan sangchen pa Duwa bumde ngada tsuna pa Chungo gyatso tarsu mundra pa Drove dremba sumla solwa de Drove drimba sum Sabjin gyache chula nganye pe Kalden drowa kuinge kyapsu gyur Chingle sambo temba geze pa Panden lame shabla solwa de Panden lame shabla solwa de Drube wangchu chimbo tsudrin bara Shenye tsushin tenze shonuwa Tekcho lamge gyujang girgun sha Gyawe sebo sumla solwade Gyawe sebo sumla solwade Mechun yunden zunze sangye Dambe chila namka gyalpo dang Chikden chöge pangbe senge sang Gyase sambe shabla solwade Gyase sambe shabla solwade Chancho tugi drogun pushin si Pakpe lhayi jeson chingi lab Nikdo drowa drembe shenyen cho Namka gensen shablas Namka gensen shabla solwade Mingme tsewe terchen chenrezi Drime kembe wangbo jambe liang Kanche kebe tsugen tsonga pa Losan trakpe shablas Losan trakpe shabla solwade Drube wanjo chambe gyatso dan Kedru mawe nima gelekpe Nyingyo tambe zunzen pasöje Dame lama sumla solwa de Dame lama sumla solwa Sungjo kunye chugi dorje dan Kusung ungyuro gyawa ensapa Lungdo ngada sangye yeshesha Kedru chimbu sumla sowa de Kedru chimbo sumla solwade Losan chugi ganzen zimbeje Teye tukse kuncho ganzen sham Lamsa sedze losan yeshete Je Tsong lama sumla solwade Je Tsong lama sumla Tupten peze ngawan chamba dan Teye tukse losan nyendra sham Gyatso tabo yunten taye nga Chinchen lama sumla solwade Chinchen lama sumla solwade Losan yeshe temba rabgeje Lodro sambo drogun namdroze Losan gyawe chutsu chikepa Tsungme Lama Sumla Solwade Sumla Solwade Kesan Namdre Shibe Longdo Ten Shedru Nige Zinla Dadrewa Kadri Nyangme Tsawe Lama La Gosong Kuba Chimbu Solwade Kosong Kuba Chimbu Solwade Mangde Tambra Shalwe Kikorge Rimni Chebe Rita Songne Se Kelsan Duce Munse Kundenye Tenzin Kedru Shabla Solwade Tenzin Kedru Shab Tusun Kamne Malu Dube Kolo San Chambe Lekshe Druge Som Lapson Gundrel Hundru Gyatso To Tinchen Trube Kula Solwade Tinchen Trube Kula Solwade Chamba Tsuden Laso Pangnorgi Tugyo Lekdam Galten Zimbetso Namshi Tinle Gyatso Kwechenkyo Yongya Jitsun Lamra Solwade Yongkyab Jitsun Lamras Losan Galwa Kunge Yeshe Ni Chikdu Time Galten Zimbetso Ramjan Kilgor Gyatso Trudugun Chinchen Lame Shabla Solwade Solwade Locho Sambo Pagyu Trashipa Tuche Tembe Chinle Yarmoda Peche Drolo Zambe Zebra Che Pande Lame Shabla Solwade Pande Lame Shabla Solwade Ramja Sonla Kunla Tawe Mi Kelsan Namdara Drebe Jumocho Sewe Kyobe Tabke Zebayi Sezen Shenye Namla Solwade Senze Shenye Namla Solwade Pande Tarbala Keche Samya Lokta Mike Shin Chize Lekpra Tongwe Mugugi Lame Chila Semla Jukparasho Lame Chila Semla Jukparasho. Nell'ultima riga chiediamo benedicimi.
And in this last line, we say, may all the lineage, may all the prayers of the lineage come to my mind. Now we repass all the stages of the path.
Tongne beba tumayi kuba chimba tembra jingelo kuba chimba tembra jingelo lenchi nyebe dawe tensandi shindu nyeka tunchen shegyurne ninsen kundu nimbe lembelo gyunche meba kewra jingelo gyunche mebra kewra jingelo luso yowa chui chubrushin nyurdu jikbe chiwa drembadam Shive Jesun Ludan Timashi Karna Ledre Chishin Tawala Ngepa Tembo Nyene Nyebetso Tashin Tawa Namkyang Pongwa Dan Getso Tada Drubra Takto Pagdan Dembra Jingelo Takto Pagdan Dembra Jingelo Chebe Mingo Dunga Kungego Yite Miru Sibe Punsogi Nyemi ringne tarbara dewala Tönye chembo kevra jingelo Tönye chembro kevra jingelo Namda samba teyi changwayi Drenda shishin payo chemboyi Tembe tsawa sosro tarbala Druba nimbo chebra jingelo Druba nimbro chebra jingelo Rangni sitsro lhungwa chishindu Magyo drowa gungyan tedrawar Tongne drowe drolwa kurgerwe jancho semcho jongra jingelo jancho semcho jongra jingelo semzang kekyan tsuten namson la komba mena jancho midru par lekpara tongne gyase domba la tsomba trakbo lobra jingelo tsomba trakbo lobra lokpe yula yengwa shiche chin yangda tenla tsushin chebayi Shine lakton sungdo drewe la nyurdo gyula kevra jingelo nyurdo gyula kevra jingelo tumo lamcha nudu gyurbana tekpa kumge chugyo dorjete kesan kewo jungo tambater dela nitu jukpra chingelo dela nitu juk Tetse ngodro namni drube shi namda thamse domba songba la chema mimbe ngeba nyegyur ne sokdan dede songra chingelo tene gyute nimbo rimnigi nenam chishin tone tsumba yim tunshi neljuro chele miye wara tambe songshi drubra chingelo Tedra lamsan tembe shenyendam tsurshin drube drona shabtenchi chida nange pardu chebe tso nyewara shiwara jinge labdu so kewa kundu yanda lama dan drame cheke pela longche chi sadan lamge yente rabzo ne dorje change koba nyurdob sho dorje change koba nyurdob sho.
Now we offer the mandala, or we make the request for the teachings.
Yedam Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Niryata Yami. Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchra sangye drupar sho sangye chedan tsoge chonam la jancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchra sangye Drupar sho sangye chedan tsoge chonam la jancho pardo dani kyaps dagi chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchra sangye
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Namo ya lai ke da ludan chin ke drubon da mi ke nam da drowa kuin ge danama che tsampa tamche ke to da gi cheten to tamche ke to da gi cheten.
Good morning. It's said in the Sutras of Buddha that Buddha Shakyamuni, when he told his story, his path that he had done, he said, he talked about many of his previous lives. In these 500 previous lives, he had 500 lives as a human being and 500 lives as an animal, where he was on the path, when he was on his spiritual path. So he talks about these 1,000 lives while on the path. And he talks about a very, very long time. When we look at the life of Buddha Shakyamuni, it's not that he reached enlightenment in one lifetime. There was a very gradual path. And so in our Western mind is, oh, that's so long. I hear that. I mean, how is that even possible? That's too tiresome. Well, don't tell me that. You're discouraging me. I don't even know if there are future lives, and I'll never be able to do such a thing. And one starts counting these lives when one really wants to reach inner peace. And one says, oh, I'm not even there. How is this going to be possible? But I believe the following. Let's imagine that we're in front of a very large mountain. We see that enormous mountain, and we generate this desire to scale this mountain and get to the top. If we had a helicopter, some kind of helicopter, it would be very easy, and we were able just to transport ourselves there immediately. But we don't. So, but then someone shows us this little path. It's not very steep. There's some parts that are harder than other, but it's a path that everyone can walk many kilometers. It's gradual. It goes round the mountain very slowly, little by little, all the way to the top. If we were in front of the mountain and we see that path, what is that? Does that give us hope? Or do we want to just abandon the idea? personally speaking, it gives me hope that, okay, there's a path that I can make. Every step that I take takes me closer. Then every once in a while I sit down, I sleep, I eat, I pick up my phone, and then I get up again and I start walking again, and sometimes a couple steps forward, sometimes a couple steps backwards, but always on the way to the top of the mountain. Let me try to explain it also in a different way. Every once in a while we have this strange idea, this perception that when there's something negative, we're afraid that it's going to be forever. Sometimes I hear, oh, I can't spend my whole life like this. And I think to myself, don't worry. It's not going to stay like this. It's going to get better or it's going to get worse. But like this, it won't remain. And on the other hand, when there's something wonderful that we like, we want that to last forever, which is another illusion. The fact that things don't stay forever, beautiful things or pleasurable things, we sometimes we can feel like it's a loss. It's a loss that we're going to face, that it's not going to last forever. But I don't think about it like this. What I see is that, we are in a constant process of transformation. And in this process of transformation, we're not able to keep something still, to keep something frozen that's not going to transform our body. It's process of transformation. We can't keep still our mind or a relationship, and we can't freeze any of these things. Anything that exists is in a constant process of transformation. The fundamental point is not about holding on to beautiful things forever, but being able to generate a way to interact and maintain a positive transformation, like a relationship with somebody, our spiritual guide or a friend or a father, mother, child. The relationship over time changes naturally. And that's not a problem. What's important is, along this process of transformation of this relationship, is making so that it becomes more and more sincere, and that it becomes deeper, that we can maintain a healthy and positive relationship over time. And the other aspects are impossible to change. Our body changes over time, but it is possible to get old in a healthy way. So the idea is not to keep something frozen still, but to transform in a virtuous way as we walk this path. Because this path that we just talked about, that it's graduated and gradual, it's a little bit like Italian bureaucracy, to use that analogy. For example, for permits and in the world of construction that I've dealt a lot with. Often we've heard, oh, well, that just takes too long, and one complains about this bureaucracy taking too long, and one looks for a shortcut but then that shortcut doesn't work, and time goes by. If I had taken, or if we had taken that path, we would have already gotten there, because that time passes. And so my experience that we should respect the time that things take. So better to take a road that is slower but goes in the right direction instead of staying still, waiting for some kind of shortcut. In our life, what happens is we have in front of that graduated gradual path. In front of that path, we don't have the choice of staying still. This is important because we don't have the choice to not transform ourselves. Because that path that we've talked about represents an inner transformation of our mind, of our body, of our more subtle mind, our imprints. So it's a process done with awareness in a certain direction. But if we say, no, it's too long, it's too tiresome, I'll never be able to make it. In the meantime, we're still walking, but in a different direction. In other words, we keep on transforming our mind, transforming our being. We're reinforcing certain habits and conditionings and imprints of our being. In one way or another, we don't have this choice to transform ourselves or not. We have the choice to transform ourselves with awareness in a direction we choose, or to transform based on a kind of reaction, often living in a kind of loop. That's just a loop that goes round and round the habits that we have. I don't know if that's clear. The other time when we talked about that, when we began these LamRim teachings, someone came to me and said, "Oh, I thought it was enough just to like breathe well, but look at that book. This path is not for me. That seems so long." First of all, this book has the writing is very large. It's not that big of a book, but yes, breathing well is enough up to a certain point. Living a life with awareness, generating awareness of our breath, meditating a bit, taking care of our speech. There are many things that are very simple that have an enormous effect on our lives, on our being. But what happens is, and that takes us to a certain point. If we want to go beyond, there are other steps that we need to take. I heard some time ago this comment where someone asked, "Oh, but you said meditating for 20 minutes a day is enough. So why are you talking about masters the masters spent their lives meditating? So if it's enough to meditate for 20 minutes a day, why is it enough?" So, and my answer is it depends on it being enough based on what. To take away that anxiety and that confused state, 20 minutes, it does so much to bring us to a state where we're more calm and focused, but to take us to enlightenment, where we generate wisdom and harmony, and where we generate love and compassion and wisdom, we need much more time, more time. That's clear, isn't it? Here we're talking about the complete path. The good thing is that it's graduated. That means that each one needs to respect the length of his own legs, and it's useless to want to already be somewhere when you're not. It's useless to say to oneself, "Oh, it would be easier if I didn't have other thoughts, if I were able to meditate 12 hours a day with a single pointedly, it would be easier. If I didn't have to work or take care of my family, if I didn't have to do this, that, and the other, at that point, you could say at this point, it would be easier if you were already a Buddha. And since you said if, but actually reality is the closest point to our arrival point is where we are. So it's fundamental. This step is fundamental. We need to accept where we are. Realize where we want to go, and as a consequence, see the path to get there. And that's what we're talking about. So we start with this fundamental point where we accept ourselves. I tried to explain it better. The other day, I had someone was looking at a comment in a text, and they asked me, what does that mean to accept yourself? So accept yourself means where you don't impose onto yourself this idea of being what you're not. When we accept ourselves, we don't say, oh, I should already be like this, I shouldn't be like this, I should do that, I shouldn't do this other thing. We don't take an idealized image of what we would like to be, what we should be, and impose that onto ourselves today. No, we say, I am the way I am, and I accept myself like this. At the same time, I direct myself towards what I want to become. Because if we don't accept what we are today, we can spend a long time idealizing ourselves, and we feel guilty for what we are not or what we should have been. And in the meantime, there's a faraway idealized idea of what we want to begin and to be, and with this guilt of what we're not, and we're blocked. We can be blocked there. Instead, I accept what I am, and I direct myself towards what I want to be. The good news, first of all, is that along this path, absolutely every one of us, we have the prerequisites to be able to get there. This is already something quite special. Let's look now a little bit at the next steps, because otherwise I stay in this introduction where we've already seen. So let's take the text from Pabonka Rinpoche. I brought this book mostly as a reference, and also to keep the commitment with this friend, disciple in Tibet, which was printed. Actually, this is he brought me this book. He said, when you go to teach the LamRim, use this, and this is actually the script of the LamRim, the longer LamRim, Lam Rim Chen Mo by Je Tsong Khapa. So let's pick up where we left off last time. We started. We looked at what are these teachings? What is this method that we have? Why is it special? Why is it important? In just a few words, and just briefly, it's a map. It's a map that has already been used many times, and it worked. Imagine someone who's taken a map, or imagine someone who has taken a trip, and after that trip, he wrote a map on how to get to that place, comes back, and then he gives the map to someone, explaining how to read that map, and then many follow that map and they're able to reach that place, and then they make their own version of that map, explaining some aspects a little differently. So it's important that the book, the teachings themselves, that they're like a map, and then it's up to us to walk, to travel. These teachings have a special characteristic of being very practical. It doesn't stay on a conceptual, philosophical level. I love the philosophy. I love debating, elaborating. But at a certain point, we really need to be able to put it into practice. And here we have step by step what we need to generate inside. And the steps that we are going to see, they're not things that we need to understand and study. We're talking about inner states of consciousness that we need to generate, and each one works as a step for the next one. Functions as a step. We saw the characteristics of who transmit, of who listens, the correct way to listen to the Dharma, who, abandoning the three erroneous vessels, like a vase that's upside down, like when you're sleeping or thinking about something else. You're present physically, but your mind isn't. So avoid being like that. Avoid listening to the Dharma with a mind of anxiety, of fear, or anger, or anything similar that makes it so that one pollutes the teaching. So maybe one is in the let's say the pot is in the right position, but it pollutes what comes inside. And the third way to listen to the Dharma that one should avoid is being like a pot full of holes where it comes in and goes just right out. We all have a couple holes, but we really need to try to hold on to the essential. And we listen also with the 6 awarenesses. We've already seen these very briefly. When, as we listen to the Dharma, we listen with the awareness of seeing who transmits us the Dharma as the doctor. We ourselves are the patient. The teachings are the medicine. And putting into practice the teachings is actually taking the medicine. We can't heal without following the healing path, of taking the medicine, and then have the awareness that one can heal. And the last one, that this healing process is gradual. This means that we're not here because we want to become experts in Buddhist philosophy or teachings, or that we want to get something, a position, or say even, oh, look how great I am that I'm receiving these teachings. We are here because we are the patient, because we want to face our selfishness, our inner wounds. We want to develop more awareness, more compassion, eliminate our defects. Also because we want to be at the service of others, and I can't offer to others that which I don't have. So these 6 awarenesses, let's try to remember them, connect with them. I'm the patient. My sickness is selfishness and ignorance and all of its derivatives. And the one who transmits the Dharma is like the doctor, and the teachings themselves is the medicine. This process of healing comes by taking the medicine, or rather putting the teachings into practice. And I can get better. I can heal myself. I can get out of this cycle of suffering because my being is interdependent and in constant transformation. So if I interact in a certain way, it'll transform in that direction. So I can transform positively. And this process this healing process is not immediate, it's gradual, without being in a hurry and without imposing onto myself that I should already be arrived, I've already be there, be healed. So now we get to the second part of the text today. It's page 120 in the Italian version, which is different from the English version, may I say. We're not going to read the whole book. It's so the way of leading disciples with the actual method, the actual map. As we have the introduction and the greatness, and now we actually look at the first steps that we need to take, and that's divided into two parts. The first one is so the method. This is a method of leading the student by means of the actual instruction, and then the basis of the path is the root of the path is how to serve a spiritual teacher. And then the next part, once we have serving a spiritual teacher, what do we do? So following the text that we're going to follow today, this is book by Pabonka Rinpoche. This goes just slightly, it deviates a little bit from the original text by Je Tsong Khapa. At this point, it goes directly to what does it mean? What does a spiritual teacher mean? How do we rely upon a spiritual guide? Pabonka Rinpoche, instead, he makes reference to another text, the Lam Rim that is a text that comes after Je Tsong Khapa, who adds different texts. So what happens here? Let me just add, this is my own note. We're on page 115 of the English version of Liberation in Our Hands. The first point is understanding. And the easier part is understanding. The difficult part is really assimilating to realize. And so this path of familiarization comes in two different times. While we meditate and when we're not meditating, let's imagine this path that we talked about before, that we have a map in our hand, and there are times where we have to stop and we need to look at the map, and then there are other times when we're on our way walking, when we're studying, listening, understanding. That's where we're stopped reading the map. Instead, when we're walking along the path, that's the process of familiarization is divided into two moments. The formal meditation and then moments outside of meditation. Here, Pabonka Rinpoche talks right away about doing the formal meditation. Today we're going to add something before. So, a fundamental point for us to understand is that understanding is fundamental. That's the first step. I mean, when we listen, we're acquiring information, we're understanding. And then there's that second step of understanding, which it means not having any doubts with it. That's not something that someone told us, but it becomes our certainty. And then we need to familiarize ourselves with that until it becomes part of ourselves. For example, we want to learn a musical instrument. Someone can come to us and give us instructions. We can watch videos, read books, or have a teacher who explains, you need to hold your hand like this, to play like this, and these notes do this, that notes this, and give us a theoretical explanation. So first I acquire the theory. I need to understand it. Need to have total understanding. So then it's no longer a theory that someone told me, but I understand it completely. And then I need to really play well. And when do I realize an instrument? When I'm able to play an instrument without thinking about it, when that instrument becomes a kind of extension of my body. I know how to play the bell, but that's it. But for those who know how to play an instrument well, I've already spoken to someone who does play well, and they say that at a certain point, the theory is disappears. It's said we need to learn to forget. We're not actually forgetting, but we're going beyond the concept, and we assimilate that concept in our own being. And here's the same thing. So that the first step is listening, and the second one is understanding, and the third is familiarization. And actually, it's very interesting because this path can be applied to any study. Once I was invited to Holland. It was quite intense. There were 7 days. I think I did 16 different conferences, and many of these were in schools or universities. So one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and in different cities, all over Holland. And at one of these was at an institute where they were training teachers, and the question was, what's the method that comes from Buddhist teachings to be able to teach something? And thinking about this, it was the first time that I thought about this way of listening, understanding, and familiarizing can be applied to anything. For example, mathematics. Let's look at any mathematical concept. First, I need to acquire information. Someone needs to explain it to me so I can understand it. Then I need to be able to explain it with my own words. And the third point, I need to take that concept and use it in a practical way. And the more I'm able to use that concept in a practical way, the more that becomes part of me and not just some kind of theory. If I stay only with the listening, then I forget it quickly. If after the listening I get to the understanding through debate, analysis, etc., but I don't put into practice, I'll forget it easily. But once I put it into practice and use it several times, it'd be hard to forget it. It goes beyond the words. I'm able to reach that reasoning without having to follow the whole theory. And this can be applied to anything, cooking or anything. And it's the same for the Dharma. So here, the first need is how to rely correctly on a spiritual guide. We'll get into this. Now I'll give an introduction, and then we'll come back to this with more details. This is a very important subject, because we have the whole path has two steps at the beginning. How to rely correctly on a spiritual guide, and then once we rely correctly on a spiritual guide, what do we need to do? It's like saying, how do you get through the door? And then once you're through the door, what do you do? So this first point is very important. At the beginning, at the beginning of Tibetan Buddhism in the West, many masters chose not to talk about this. I think I'm not speaking about the master, but the context itself being immature. Because if I start talking about the importance of a spiritual guide, it could seem like I want to show how important I am. You should follow me, and you as disciples, you should do this, that, and the other. And this, we don't want this to be the perception. This is the function here is to say, no, here we're on the path together, and this is what we need to do. So to avoid this, let's say that first step was skipped, let's say, but I don't think we should skip it. We could look at it together, because my sincere attitude is, I'm on my path. Who wants to? We can walk together. And let me just take a few steps backwards. We're made up of habits of familiarization. Our mind, when we're faced with any situation, the way that we react to that situation is based much more on our habits than our understanding, our knowledge. And our tendency is to repeat our habits. They're habits. I mean, they're things that we repeat. I don't know if you've ever realized that you're in a loop. I mean, years go by and you're just repeating the same mistakes. It reminds me of a movie that I saw when I was a kid. It was the story of this man who just keeps waking up on the same day. And he just keeps waking up. It's the same day, Groundhog Day. And every day he makes the same mistakes, and he falls in the same hole, and he reacts in the same way. And he realizes it because he has the memory for that. But he just keeps doing it again. It can happen that people do the same over years. I don't know if you've had this experience. So we have this tendency to repeat and stay in these kinds of inner loops. And to get out of these loops, we need something that gets us out of that dynamic. In other words, if I'm able to see things in a certain way, and until I don't interact with something that's outside that dynamic, I'll keep making those mistakes. I heard once that like 99% of our thoughts are just repetitions of previous thoughts. I think it's even more than 99%. And what happens is, if we take someone and we isolate that person from other realities, then the tendency would be just to reinforce that person's conditioning. So if we want to go beyond some habit, a level of knowledge, a necessary thing is to interact with someone who helps us open our mind, to help it, to show us our behavior. About anything. Let's say the example that was given to me by my masters, to me was, okay, you want to learn carpentry. Then if you want to learn carpentry, well, you need someone to show you. Well, someone can say, oh no, I'm self-taught. But are you self-taught with books and videos or without? If you're self-taught with books, then you're not self-taught. If you're self-taught with no external information, so maybe you have imprints from past lives and you were the great carpenter and then at a certain point you just remember everything, or the only way is through trial and error. I do this and it doesn't work, I try a different way. And then we need to have this ability also. We do trial and error, and then we can transmit this to others, which is beautiful. It doesn't come just with human beings. All animals have this ability. We think that we're so special, but it's not a characteristic only of humans. Animals, from generation to generation, they transmit to they transmit. I learned, for example, I learned recently that bees, when a bee is born, he knows where to go for the nectar because the other bee does a kind of dance that gives the coordinates, the distance to show him where the flowers are. And they communicate, they transmit knowledge. So we depend on others to be able to get out of our inner cycles. And according to our interactions, we transform in one way or another. When I talk to someone, what that person tells me, that influences me. When I read a book, regardless of the topic, that transforms me. And let's remember, at the basis, there's this fundamental concept that wherever there's interaction, there's transformation. So the starting point, I'm going to go right to the point. If I want to learn something, I need someone who has already seen it to then help me see it. If I want to go somewhere, I need someone who knows who get there, who then share the road with me. Otherwise, I try here, it doesn't work. I try that direction, it doesn't work. And this doesn't have to do only with the spiritual path. The first point is you need to rely correctly on a guide. If you want to learn a language, we need to rely correctly on a guide to learn this language, be it artificial intelligence or a book, but someone by himself. I want to learn how to speak Korean, and just sits there and closes his eyes. What's going to happen? At least I need someone who speaks Korean, that someone who says a word to me or a book to read. I need something. So we need to be guided along this path, and it's extremely important, this word guide, because we don't need someone to carry us. We need someone to show us the path. Because there's an attitude that's more and more present. Let me try to explain it well. We have this attitude. We want to entrust to others what we should do ourselves. In other words, we want to outsource. Okay, instead of doing it myself, I'll have it done for me. But there are things that we cannot outsource. Our spiritual path, our inner transformation, I can't give this job to someone else. I need to do it. This reminds me of a story. Just to help us remember this, I'll tell you this story. There's a monastery in Tibet, and and also in India called Gyume. It's one of the tantric colleges. It's in the Gelupa tradition, the great institutions of philosophical studies. There are some specific monasteries where then you can go to study meditation, tantra, etc. Gyutu Gyume, the superior and inferior tantric college. So at the University of Gyume, I spent a short time there studying other things, and they told me that there's a tradition that after a certain number of years where someone is there, he should give a test, having memorized a certain number of texts, and give an exam. And he who's not able to pass this memorization exam gets expelled. But then there were problems, because maybe over the time they saw that some monks were extremely important to the whole monastery, but they weren't good at memorizing. So they have this rule that they need to respect, but they don't want to expel someone that they know would have to have trouble. So they invented this possibility of outsourcing the exam. So someone can take the exam on this person's behalf. So sometimes Tibetan culture, there's some strange things. Okay, the exam was given and someone else came on my behalf and it was successful. So it's like this is very practical. For example, if someone needs to take a trip and sees astrologically that it's not the greatest day to travel. Let's say you need to leave on Wednesday and that's a bad day for traveling astrologically. What would we do? That we need to take a trip, and that's not a good day. We would try to change the date, or we would just travel full of fear. No, Tibetans, what do? I need to leave on Wednesday. I already have my ticket. Wednesday's the day to travel, but I see that the previous or the next day, Monday or Tuesday or Thursday is a good day. So I start the trip the day before. I keep my ticket. I sleep at my neighbor's house, or I sleep in the hotel at the airport. So I've begun my trip. What's interesting, when it works, but what happens that often we want to give to others what we should do. Recently, I was talking to a doctor friend, who's a researcher, who was telling me in this last time, there's medicine that was for diabetes, but shows that it's very, very helpful to lose weight. And so this doctor friend, she's doing research on that. And the conclusion is, I prefer to outsource. I prefer to take medicine instead of changing my lifestyle. And very often we have this tendency, instead of putting effort ourselves, we want someone to do something for us. Okay, I'll go to the doctor. I'll take this kind of medicine. I'll do 1,000 different therapies, but I don't want to change my lifestyle. But this doesn't work. Along our spiritual path, the only way to transform ourselves is to do the work ourselves. And here, when we talk about relying on the spiritual guide, it's not that I am entrusting myself to you. Do with me what you want or what you should. No, I rely on you. I am relying on you. Show me what I need to do. Otherwise, it'd be a bit like once we were in Tibet with Lama Rinpoche. I was in the car with him, and we were going towards Chatran, in between two villages, and in maybe an hour by car normally. And with him, it took about 7 hours, because in that 1 hour distance, there were many small villages, and in each village, everyone from all the villagers would come outside on the road and make a long line. They were there with the katas waiting for blessings, so the car had to go very, very slowly, and he would put his hand outside the window and bless each person. I was sitting behind, and to my side was the monastery of there was the abbot of the monastery of Chatran as an older monk, and at a certain point there were these old people that said to him in dialect, which means don't send me to hell, and he kept repeating, if you're not going, I'm not going to send you. So it was a way of asking for blessing. I don't really understand exactly what they meant, but his answer is like, you don't want to give me that job, do you? You can't give me that job. If you along in your life, if in your future, if you have a better life or a worse life, that doesn't depend on me. So relying correctly on a spiritual guide means I want to go to this place. I want to get to this place. I want to be healed from this sickness. Can you help me along this path? But there's a fundamental point here. Let's say I look for a guide for a certain path, but I don't trust the guide completely. I get to a point where the guide says, here, better to slow down, walk slowly, because then you need energy for later. No, I'm full of energy. I need to go quickly. That's not going to work well. And at a certain point, the guide says, okay, we're going to take this road. Even if the other one looks more appetizing, no, it looks better. But in my opinion, no. A little bit what happened with at the beginning with the GPS is, it happened to me at the beginning with the navigators I'd be in the car with someone that didn't really trust the GPS. So a 1 hour road, travel would take 3. Maybe one didn't know the road that well. But the GPS would say better right, and the other one didn't really trust the GPS, so they know, let me go left. So the GPS is a clear example. If I need to choose the right navigating system, and once I choose that one, I need to trust it, because if I don't trust who's guiding me, that uncertainty can block me. I can be there at the crossroad and not know which way to go, and then I don't follow the path well. So relying correctly on a spiritual guide doesn't mean, here, I'm putting myself in your hands, do with me what you want. No, I have trust in you. You have trust in me. So the guide, I trust you because you have trust in me. You trust that if I follow what you tell me, that I am going to get where you're directing me. And this reciprocal faith is the basis of the foundation. At the basis of the foundation, we need trust, mutual trust. Same thing with a doctor. If I go to a doctor to cure a sickness, it's fundamental for there to be reciprocal trust, for there to be healing. If I go to learn anything, this mutual trust is fundamental. Because if I don't believe that you can actually learn, then I'm not going to really teach you everything that would be necessary. And if I don't think I can learn, I wouldn't put effort into learning or trusting what you tell me. So to be guided for a mundane or spiritual process, we need, first of all, to make sure that our guide, that we trust our guide. We're talking about changing our habits even more. If I entrust myself to help me develop positive aspects like patience, love, or compassion, if that guide has realized it himself or herself, or at least, so ideally, we want someone who has the quality that we want to develop, or at least someone who is in the process of doing that, someone who has gone a few kilometers more than I have along this path. So the spiritual path towards enlightenment is a path that we can't do by ourselves, but at the same time, it's an individual path in the sense that no one can do it for us, but we can't do it by ourselves. We need a guide. We need to be guided, but we also need those who accompany us, the Sangha. The one who guides us is our Guru, the Buddha, and the path itself is the Dharma, and those who accompany us is the Sangha, and each one is important. Imagine a path, an arduous path. Those who walk with us is very important, and of course the one who shows us the path and the path itself. When we look for someone who guides us, we need to look for some fundamental characteristics. The first one is that person, that being that should guide us. We should be able to interact with this being. One of my masters, from whom I received many transmissions, but never any formal teachings, because I never understood anything he said, unfortunately for me. One of the masters of my masters, Tapo Rinpoche, I received transmissions, 8,000 verse perfection of wisdom teachings, for example. But he had a Tibetan dialect. When he would speak, he had his assistant who would translate for him. So I can learn from his presence. I can receive his blessings and many things. But I need to listen to someone that I understand for a teaching. So if we have someone who guides us, we need someone that we can interact with awareness. So should it be in a subtle body, in a light form, or someone in flesh and bone? Because if a marvelous enlightened being and his subtle body tells me, many things, I wouldn't see it. I wouldn't be able to perceive it. Well, anyway, for me, maybe someone says, no, I prefer to have the manifestation of the subtle Sambhogakaya. But normally what happens, we're able to interact through our senses. And so it needs to be someone with whom, someone that we can see and touch and hear and interact with. So our spiritual guide needs to be someone that we can interact with. Secondly, needs to be someone who can touch our hearts. And here there's an important difference between a teacher and a spiritual guide. The function of a teacher is to transmit knowledge, which is very important. The function of a spiritual guide is to bless and to guide spiritually also through the blessing. Can also be a teacher. In other words, a teacher can be or not be a spiritual guide, and a spiritual guide is actually can also be or not be the actual teacher, or both. Ideally both, but it doesn't have to be. So a teacher transmits knowledge, and if I need to receive an explanation by someone, as a teacher, it's important that that person has learned it well and is able to explain it well. I can explain something that I've understood. I put it into words, but I'm not able to put it into practice. I haven't realized it, but I'm a good teacher and I'm able to explain it. And there are many who have this amazing ability to explain something. They learn something, they assimilate it, they're able to put it into words. This is the role of a teacher. Spiritual guide is someone that beyond explaining something has the function of blessing us. I spent a lot of time understanding what a blessing was. I think I've understood something. Once I was with Kachin Losang Putso Rinpoche in Tibet, my master, and I asked him, what is a blessing? Sometimes we ask, may I receive these blessings? Give me your blessings. May I get blessings? But what is a blessing? I have a very logical mind. I like understanding things. And he said that a blessing is a favorable condition for an inner and virtuous transformation. A blessing can come through a physical presence, a word that we hear, many different ways we can receive a blessing. But it's an interaction that touches our heart, that moves something inside, that takes us beyond that conceptual understanding. Is that clear? We can receive blessings from places. It said a being can bless a place. A being can bless a being. A being can bless a place, and a place can bless a being. So when we go to certain places that have specific characteristics, we receive these blessings. So these interactions, they help us understand things that we didn't understand before. They open up our heart. This is a very deep way of being guided, of guiding. So, for example, there's the story. It's a very beautiful story. Then I leave it to you to read more about it. This relationship between Tilopa and Naropa. Naropa was a practitioner. He was a master himself. Had finished all of his philosophical studies. He was a great meditator. Had many disciples. Had gotten to the apex of his monastic career. He was very respected, but deeply within, he felt that there was something missing to move from understanding to realizing, to go beyond the conceptual. And at a certain point, he received this message through a deep intuition, which was, for you to realize, you need to find this master named Tilopa. In this, about 1,500 years ago, maybe a century before, after, it was in India. India is enormous. And he didn't know any master named Tilopa, never heard of him. He left everything behind. His position, all of his friends and disciples, and he goes looking for Tilopa, walking in India. But how could, I asked myself, how could one manage at that time? After a while, he was tired, exhausted. He couldn't find this Tilopa. And one day he was on the bank of a river, and he saw this man, more or less naked, with ash clad, with a kind of Rastafarian hair, looked like a sadhu, and he was fishing. He would take a fish. He would open up the fish with his hands, and he would take out the guts of the fish, and he would eat the guts of the fish and throw away the rest. And he looked at that man and said, how horrible is that? Poor man, how much negative karma is he accumulating? He's killing all these fish, and he's not even eating them. And he started criticizing mentally. And as he's thinking that man it turned towards him and said, "It's too bad that I'm the one you're looking for." And then he started walking behind him. He was Tilopa, and he spent 12 years with him. And then every once in a while he would say, "If I had a disciple, he should do this." And these are they were just the craziest things one could do. And every time one would do it, it would happen. It would create a condition for him to be able to understand something on a non-conceptual level, something that before was merely conceptual, internally an extra step, let's say. And after 12 years, he called him my child. And Naropa became one of the most important masters in the Vajrayana Buddhism, and also for the philosophy. So this story of Naropa and Tilopa was very beautiful. But his role wasn't to teach him Tilopa. His role was to bless him. And through his love and his awareness, he was creating situations for Naropa to realize what he had already understood, and for that to come out. So when we look for a spiritual guide, there are two aspects. We need a teacher, yes, because when we need to meditate, we need to know what we're meditating on and how to do it. So we're in the phase of listening and understanding, and the teacher is important for that. And the spiritual guide is also someone that we trust, and we develop this faith in this person, because that person represents someone that through the connection we have and through that person's characteristics, that person is able to touch our heart. It's not necessarily only with words, but it can be the image, it can be his presence, many different ways. But that interaction moves something within us. It's happened to me with many of my masters, to be in their presence and then just to turn into a child and not know what to say, or feel deep feelings, and not understand where that feeling come from. For example, I remember one of my masters, every time I was in his presence receiving teachings, I don't know why, but just being in his presence, my concentration was always better. Or teachers, for example, when we're in their presence, all the concepts are incredibly clear. But then when we're away from them, then it's more confused. This shows us that when we look for a spiritual guide, it's not someone who just explains something to us, but it's an interaction where that presence with that person, that being with whom we interact, it helps us to have clarity, helps us understand, elaborate, and transform ourselves. I'm trying to put into words something that goes beyond words, and I think many of us have had experiences like this. All right. So, first of all, in relying on a spiritual guide, there are two ways. Let's give an analogy here. One way is where one analogy would be, imagine we know someone and we learn about that person's qualities, and we little by little we fall in love with this person. Another way is when we meet someone and we don't know how or why, but we just fall crazy in love. It's love at first sight, and then later, little by little, we get to know that person better and the qualities. But when we meet people, sometimes when it can happen when we meet someone and one can feel a kind of a deja vu, a kind of this, one feels a strong attraction. For example, once it was said to me, Lama, thank goodness you explained this, because I can tell you, if you were a woman, I can guarantee that I would be in love with you. So we, in our training, in our formation, in the shaping of our mind, if we're attracted to someone, what are the possibilities of this relationship? It's a family member, it's a friend, or it's an intimate relationship, a romantic relationship. So when we feel attraction towards someone who is not a family member, who is not a friend, and is not someone with whom I have a romantic relationship, who is this person? And we try to put this person into one of those categories. And this creates confusion. Very often at the beginning, we feel very confused because it feels like a friend, but it's not a friend. Okay, then I must be in love. But that's not it either. And what happens is when we have a strong attraction towards someone, naturally, we'll put that person in that category. Maybe it's the father that I never had, or the boyfriend, or the girlfriend. We can try to squeeze into one of these categories. And in projecting like this, we can create dreams and thoughts that are not very coherent. To be very transparent, I've seen people who at the beginning, they've created this strong attraction towards someone as a spiritual guide, not having clarity. They don't know what category to put him into. One starts to feel this kind of erotic projection, and that's not it. And one doesn't know where to put this guide, this figure, because I don't know. Growing up, did your parents have a guru? Was there a guru of the family? Even in the Christian tradition, there could maybe there's the spiritual guide in family. We're not that used to such a figure in our lives. So in our context, we really need to learn that there is a kind of relationship. It's not a family member, it's not a friend, and it's not the relationship of an intimate relationship in a couple where attraction comes, the pleasure of being together, a trust, a kind of love that can be deeper and stronger than any of the other three categories. This is the relationship with our guru. This reminds me of a time when I was at lunch in Milan. I was together with Lama Ganchen. We were invited. We were invited to lunch. We were with a friend and his friend who was a very important CEO, very intelligent, etc. And during this lunch, more than a conversation, it seemed more of a debate, or he just kept asking questions, question after question. And then at a certain point, Rinpoche just said, you speak, you answer. And at the after lunch, this man said, what do you have? What relationship do you have? I said, he's my master, but you know everything quite well. Why do you still need him? What is he for you? And I looked at him and I said, I mean, I didn't even know really what to answer. It was so obvious, but Rinpoche intervened. I don't remember exactly the words, but he said something like, the love that exists between master and disciple and master goes beyond the love that one recognizes in the relationship with a family member, a friend. And he said it in a way where this man was really touched, and he said, oh, okay, so you're talking about the relationship that existed at the time of Socrates. I mean, this is something that is possible because all relationships at any level are based on trust. I go to a restaurant, between me and the server, there's a relationship of trust, right? I want to eat this. I expect him to bring me that. And that he's not going to put something gross in the plate in my. And the one who is serving, he trusts me that I will pay for what I'm ordering. So even at that level, there's trust. So all relationships are based on this mutual trust. And at the same time, these relationships are based on something that I offer and that I receive. There's a kind of exchange. The importance of a relationship is not so much in the qualities of the person, but in the characteristics of the faith and that exchange. For example, I have three people in front of me. One who teaches how to paint one's nails, one how to give a manicure. I've never learned, but it's important. So someone that can teach how to do a good manicure, and a wonderful person, is sweet and lovely, loving. And then there's someone who teaches me how to cultivate food. The soil, the land, and use the food, harvest. It's not that nice. And then there's someone who teaches me how to communicate and have clarity among people, among these three people. Which relationship is most important to me? What's the most precious relationship here? The manicurist, there's a very loving person, or the relationship with the person who teaches me how to plant and harvest food and prepare food, or the one who teaches me how to communicate well? In my opinion, it would be the one who teaches me how to grow food, even if that person is not as nice as and pleasant as the others. So if I'm judging the qualities of the person, I'd say that the manicurist is, the best. But the relationship, which is the most important relationship for me, is the one who teaches me how to plant and harvest and prepare food. So when we talk about when we talk about it in our lifetime, there are many important things in our lifetime. We have hobbies. We have to take care of our body. We need to learn how to deal well with people. And then there's an inner part of transformation, of this process of inner qualities of wisdom and love, this inner process of transformation to get out of our cycle of suffering. So what's the priority of all of these things? For me, is our inner path. So when I have many relationships in front of me, which is the most important? The one that brings me this. So this is what takes us to the word guru. Guru literally in Tibetan would be Lama. La means the highest point. Ma is a negation, so there is nothing higher. For example, you get to a mountain, the summit of the mountain is called La. It's the same La of Lama. So one literal meaning of Lama is that he who is not higher, he the highest. A guru, a translation could also be heavy, not something tiresome heavy, but important. So being the highest point, or no one higher or heavy. This doesn't have to do. These are attributes that don't have to do with the person, but the role. So in all the relationships, the relationship of exchange, of development of qualities, and the development of qualities that I take from life to life, that the guide that helps me with this. I mean, all of the priority is there. So the one who teaches me the manicure, or how to cultivate food, or to communication. I mean, this is not about who is nice and who's better. No, it's all about the importance and the priority of the nature of the relationship. And we need to, first of all, to give value to this relationship. This is difficult for us. Very often our tendency is to see the person and idealize that person, and I trust the person. Lama Rinpoche, for me, was always a marvelous, marvelous person. It was so pleasurable to be around him. And jokingly once I said, there were many, many people who would be around him, and I would say, for a long time, I'd say, in my opinion, they weren't Buddhists. They were not Buddhists, but Rinpochists. They're following Rinpoche, because we have this tendency to connect to the person, and obviously, as we interact with people, we receive a lot. But excuse me if I use a term that is a little bit strong, but and I say it with all the respect towards all other traditions, but the guru is not the savior. The guru is not here to save us. So someone, this idealized, perfect, enlightened being that has come to save me. No, the guru is a marvelous being here to guide me so that I can get out of my suffering. I can't give I can't entrust my path to the guru. I can entrust myself to the guru in the sense I ask to be guided. And when I talk about entrusting oneself to the guru, it's not just the person, but I'm entrusting myself to the relationship more than the person. Let me give you another example. There's a very good doctor, for example, or think about someone, a very, very good doctor. And I have a sickness that the doctor is able to cure. And that doctor, I really enjoy being close to this doctor. He's so nice. Maybe I even fix a visit once a week or go live in his condominium. I just feel great when I'm around him. But if I don't entrust myself to that person as my doctor and take the medicine that he gives me, I can spend my whole life near that doctor and not heal. It's obvious, and it can also help that being close, that I inadvertently do the right things, but maybe not everything. So when we say at the beginning that it's when we talk about the importance of relying correctly on a spiritual guide, that this brings up also a very important aspect, which is trust in ourselves. How can I entrust myself as entrust myself to you as a spiritual guide? Trust you as a spiritual guide if I don't believe that I can, if I can walk this path. It's like going to a doctor without the faith that one can get better. So no matter, even if I say, oh, how wonderful this doctor is, as such, it's so much, this doctor is so well prepared, etc., etc. If I don't believe that I can be healed, then it doesn't matter what he or she says or what kind of medicine he gives me. So this trust, faith in ourselves that we are able to do this path, and because I can follow this path, because I know that I can follow this path and successfully, then I'm able to entrust myself, rely successfully on someone. Because otherwise there's the risk of relying on someone so that they do for us. And then there's something else that's extremely important. It's that this first step of relying correctly on a spiritual guide is not immediate. It's not, okay, now I've done it, now let's go. I mean, it's something, it's cyclic. We start at a certain level, little bit, then you go round and it's deeper, and it's a relationship that just is deeper and deeper. It's just not that it's there and not there, or, from one day to the next it's there. So when we rely on a spiritual guide in the Mahayana path, there's certain qualities we need to look for. Ideally, it needs to be someone who has a good morality. In just a few words, that means someone who has is coherent in his actions and is able to do what is good and positive, and is able to abandon what is harmful and negative. So have good morality, a healthy behavior, conduct. Second, someone that has good concentration, or rather someone who has this ability to direct his own mind and control of himself, to be present in that present moment. And that third characteristic, ideally, someone who has correct discernment and wisdom, who's able to have clarity of things, is able to see the clarity of reality and its interdependence. These are the three main characteristics. These are the three trainings, higher trainings of the path. If we were to summarize the path, it's about training in morality, in concentration, and in wisdom. These are the three higher trainings. If I want to train in morality, then I need someone who has a good morality to be my trainer. The same thing for concentration and the same thing for wisdom. Then needs to be someone who has a good knowledge of the Buddhist teachings, because since this path comes about through the teachings of Buddha, this guide needs to know them well and needs to be able to explain these teachings in a way that I can understand them. Needs to be someone in this Mahayana path who has a coherent view of reality and an understanding of emptiness, and is able to explain it to me in a way that I can understand. And as a minimum, needs to be someone who has more qualities than I do on a spiritual plane, and someone who puts effort into putting into practice what he teaches, so that there's a coherence between what is taught and what is practiced in his own life. It doesn't mean that necessarily needs to have realized what he's transmitting, but as a minimum is putting effort into what he's teaching. Someone who's already walking on that path. And the last of the 10 qualities, but not the last in importance, someone who has love towards the disciple, who never loses faith, never stops loving its disciple. And in this process of love, there's something else that's important. It's not so easy to really understand, to grasp, that when I look for someone who guides me along the path, one fundamental characteristic is for that person is to give importance to my happiness and my spiritual path, or rather my process of growth, my happiness, my suffering is important to him or her. In other words, he has love towards me. And this includes another aspect, which is he loves me or she loves me independently from the judgment that he could have of me. Because normally, in our mundane relationships, where there's a relationship of love, we have this idea, oh, I'm not worthy of your love, and if I do this, you're not going to love me anymore. I need to be good to be able to receive your love. I don't know how many times we've tried to do things to get the approval and the loving approval of someone. In the relationship with our spiritual guide, this doesn't exist. I need to trust that he or she loves me independently of what I do or who I am. Because this faith, this trust, this type of love allows me to be in front of my spiritual guide and be totally transparent without trying to show something that's different than what is. And that's not easy. It's not easy to put ourselves in front of someone, trust, rely on someone without trying to show something different from what we are. In the same way, it's strange to say it, it's not easy to accept that we can be loved independently of judgment, free of judgment. Is that clear? This is a very important characteristic to consider when we talk about relying on a spiritual guide. Lama Rinpoche, for me, he's my so-called root guru. So we can have many teachers, many gurus, and one that touches our heart in a particular way. And many ways he showed this this aspect, this that your happiness, your spiritual growth, your path is important to me, independently of what you do. I'm not here to judge you. It's not a relationship where we say, okay, you trust me, and I take the commitment to take care of you and to guide you, but here's the contract. If you're good, then yes, and if not, then no. I will care for you if it's like this. No, it's a mutual relation. It's a relationship based on mutual trust and faith. That mutual faith and trust and love. It's not for nothing that it's said before entrusting oneself to a spiritual guide, one needs 12 years. It's not that we see someone, we see his high titles, and okay, no, this is my teacher, this is my guru. Formally, we can do it, but it's not real, because developing that type of love and trust, to be able to feel loved and seen, and for this relationship to come about, it takes time. It's not one day to the next. When I look for a doctor, the first characteristic is that I look for is that person needs to care for me. My state of being, my state of health, my mental health. This is the first thing for me. It's already happened that I've been to a doctor who was very, very prepared, but I didn't feel that level of interest, and so I never went back and looked for someone else. This is something that needs to be at the basis, and traditionally speaking, it's said that to find this type of relationship, the one take up 12 years. And it's not that we need to set the date, and put it in our calendar, but I'm just saying we need to allow time for this relationship to come out. This is a relationship that goes from life to life. So the first point for today that I wanted to bring, the fundamental point is to understand why we should rely on a spiritual guide, or what does it mean to rely on a spiritual guide, and why we should rely on a spiritual guide. When we understand, not just on a conceptual level, but beyond, that the spiritual guide is not just the person, but is the relationship that then is inseparable from the person, that allows us to have more people that have that function. Some time ago, I saw an interview with a spiritual guide, and the interviewer said, "Oh, so you're a guru? You're special?" No, the guru is not a title. It's a function. I'm not a guru. I can be someone's guru, but I'm not a guru in and of itself. And in our tradition, we use the term Lama, which then has become a kind of title, but it's not. Someone can be my Lama, my spiritual guide, but that person doesn't exist as a spiritual guide without the disciple who refers to him and considers him spiritual guide. So in this, when I need to rely on a spiritual guide, the more than one person can fill that function. Just a few days ago, I made the list of all my masters, and I got to 30. But teachers and masters. Some that gave me just a few teachings and taught me specific things. One, for example, Kachin Losan Tsupa Rinpoche. At the very beginning, I was 12, 13 years old, at the beginning, and I received my first teachings of Buddhist philosophy, but he transmitted so much more to me, and unfortunately a few years later he left his body. He was he was also one of the masters of Lama Ganchen, and he was one of the most important people to me. He had a level of love that I had rarely seen, and humbleness. There's this one scene that just is fixated on my mind. Every time that Lama Ganchen Rinpoche would go to the south of India, he was the monastery of the Tashi Lumpa monastery, and he would the abbot would prepare everyone outside with flowers and katas, and then Lama Ganchen Rinpoche, he would have the car stopped maybe 500 meters or before arriving to the monastery, because he wanted to do prostrations to him, maybe 100 meters before it. And even there in the middle of the mud, he was there, getting down to make prostrations, and the abbot would run towards him, say, no, don't do that. So, so I remember many important masters, Kachin Losan Chipo Rinpoche, when there were very important teachings, for example, they would go for important teachings, and everyone, there was the hierarchy of all of these masters with their entourage. They'd arrive with beautiful cars and with many people around them. But then when he would arrive, walking with his simple jola and nobody with him, he would walk towards the place of the teachings, and they would just open up for him, because he was incredibly well respected, incredibly humble. And it's said actually that he didn't have a shadow. I was a young boy. He had a very close relationship with Lama Ganchen, so he sent me to Lama Ganchen Rinpoche organized me to receive my first teachings on philosophy with him, and anybody could have done that because they were very, very basic. But it was so I remember these very first teachings where he was seated with the window behind him, and those first days I could see that, there was clearly the shadow of the sun on the objects on the table, and yet his shadow was very, very, very thin. And I said to him, "Oh, I've heard that you don't have a shadow. Is that true?" And he didn't say yes or no. And it's said that this is one of the signs. This is one of the signs, one of the most important signs of someone who has realized the illusory body. So at the point, I had very few years of relationship with him, but that but just remembering him touches me so deeply. Instead, I have other masters who've taught me specific aspects of philosophy or a meditation technique, but all together they had this function of being like a guide along this path. That's why it said that we can have more than one spiritual guide, or we can say we have one root guru and many manifestations. We have so the spiritual guide is one, and then there are many manifestations of that spiritual guide. One that shows me in many aspects of myself, one who teaches me something specific. And there's also an important sutra, the Ganda Vyuha. We see this in Borobudur. That first level shows the law of cause and effect. The second level shows the life of Buddha. And then above, we see this sutra of the Ganda Vyuha. Talks about Sandana, this practitioner who goes to Manjushri, and then Manjushri sends him to others, sends him to another 108 masters, 54 men and 54 women. And he goes to all these masters and gradually goes, he goes to one, and then sends him to another. And each one shows him an aspect of the path. And this shows us that first level of Borobudur shows us that there's the suffering exists, the law of karma. The second shows us how Buddha was able to get out of the cycle of suffering. And then the third is we can all do it, but it's not a path that we do by ourselves. But it's a path that requires a guide. So there's also this expression that every guru is a manifestation of the guru. And there are different ways of understanding this. That's kind of a mystical way. We see that all gurus are one mental, one mind stream, or less mystically, we see that there's one function. That function comes through the interaction of many, many people. So they're all manifestations of the same. So it's kind of the same thing. We can look at it mystically or not. Also because what's the function of a Buddha? To help beings. A Buddha is a being that was able to get out of his own suffering, and is fixated on help, if we can say it like that, is fixated on helping others get out of their suffering. And what's the deepest way of helping someone is helping them get out of their own suffering. And who does this for me is my gurus. So who is doing the job of a Buddha is my guru. But we have this idea, is he really a Buddha? Let me see. No, he doesn't have this hair like this. Oh, it's said that on the palm of the hand of a Buddha there's the wheel of the Dharma. No. But then I saw him lose his patience that one day. We have this tendency of looking and doing this kind of, how can I call it? We can like testing, because we're looking for the savior, the one who's going to do for us. But there's an aspect. If a Buddha manifested himself today in his pure aspect, first of all, we wouldn't be able to see him, because inevitably we see everyone through the filter of ourselves, and we project our story onto others. I mean, we really use ourselves we're self-centered, let's say. So what you do, I judge through the filter of what I think, you know, what you're doing through this filter of what I would do if I were you. So when we're in front of anyone, we just judge them through the filter of ourselves. So even in the presence of a Buddha, we wouldn't be able to see him. Also because as Buddha Shakyamuni just said that a being cannot judge another being. And doing that is the cause of degeneration of himself, which means I see you. What can I see? I see the expressions on your face. I see your physical appearance. I can see how you behave. I can know you maybe for a longer time. So I put together various situations, or also the feelings and sensations I can have in front of you. But what goes on in your head, I do not know. There are many, many examples, even recent. People, for example, in the monastery of Serpom, there was this monk who was called, nicknamed Dimakara, which means crazy. He was there. He spent his whole life in the monastery. He wasn't the most intelligent. He didn't have a good monastic career. Was always joking. He was really the clown. And then one day he died. He thought, okay, he's passed. And, he was respected because he was old, but not because he was spiritually developed. But he died and he entered into a meditative state. He's dead. There was no more heartbeat or breath, but his body was warm. And it didn't enter into the physical decay, which is a clear sign that the person is in a meditative state. And normally, if someone is able to maintain this state for a couple hours, that's already huge. But he stayed in the state for weeks, and everybody was shocked. They thought, oh, we spent the whole time calling him, out of his mind. And in the end, he's showing us that he was more developed than all of us. And similarly, Ken Lakpala, when I was a child studying, he was always telling me, you do not know who you have in front of you. I don't know. Maybe you're all enlightened beings, here to help me along my path. I don't know. But what happens is if we try to judge, we really don't know. There's a verse in the Guru Puja, for example, that says, I'm going to read it to you directly. Let's see. Just a minute. Verse 46. We make our request to you, O compassionate refuge protector. Protector because he protects me from my mental defilements by guiding me along the path. And is the refuge because he's the one who grants me a refuge to get out of samsara, gives me the dharma. So we make our request to you, O compassionate refuge protector. With precision, you impart the good way of those gone to bliss to the unruly beings of this degenerate age, who are difficult to tame and who are not subdued by the countless Buddhas of the past. Sangye Dhamme means that the many Buddhas of the past were not able to tame my mental defilements. Not like taming a wild beast, but here I'm full of mental defilements. And in the past, infinite number of Buddhas have come, but they weren't able to help me. Here, I'm still here. So, innumerable Buddhas have already come, but they haven't been able to tame me. So, Marun Dunke Nindu Drwala. So, in this degenerate age, with unruly beings of this degenerate age, Deshin Lamshang Jishin Tumpayi, you who guide me, those gone to bliss, the Buddhas. So, you, refuge protector, I make my request to you. So, in other words, my masters, my spiritual guides, are able to subdue my defilements. So you are able to do with me what all the Buddhas of the path were not able to do. So I'm more grateful to you than I am to all the Buddhas of the past. You are acting as a Buddha. This means also, so when we're in front of our spiritual guide, we see in the spiritual guide, in the Guru, we see the Buddha. Because Buddha Shakyamuni transmitted his experience and his knowledge and his path to generation, that it's come to us today. And also from the point of view, if we see the one who is doing that job is the one who has manifested and is actually guiding me. And in LamRim, we will look at all the details here. But the fundamental point is, if we really want to walk in a stable way, a deep way, we need to be guided. This process of being guided doesn't depend exclusively on who can guide us, but on how we entrust ourselves, how we rely on the guide. There's a story of a master with a disciple where the disciple had total faith in his guru and followed him everywhere, and the disciple got out of samsara, reached enlightenment before his master. But that did not take away the gratitude and the respect that the disciple had for his master. He still remained his master, because it's through the faith that he was able to successfully reach his goal along the path. So what happens here is the faith that I have towards he who guides me is important for me, because I want to follow this path. And if I need to follow an arduous path, go somewhere where I've never been, I need to have faith in the one who's guiding me. I need to be careful. And I repeat, a guru can have many different manifestations. We can have many gurus. And we can have many gurus as long as they are the manifestations of the guru. And if they're not, then I get confused, because at that point I'm trusting the person and not the function, not the dharma. So why is this one like this and that one is like that? I can feel like I'm betraying this guru because I'm following this other one. So at the beginning, it said, at the beginning of our spiritual path, the fewer guides we have, the fewer gurus we have, the better it is. But the more we're able to really take refuge in the Dharma and follow the Dharma, it said that the more guides we have, the better it is. So what we'll see tomorrow is, once we've understood the importance of relying correctly on a spiritual guide, how can we really, really, really trust? How can we rely correctly? So beyond just meeting someone that I can rely on, we need to create and construct a relationship. We need to construct that love, that trust, that gratitude. It doesn't come immediately. And here we'll see there are two ways to do it: in meditation and outside meditation. Tomorrow we'll see how we can do this during meditation. And here we'll see all the dharmas of preparation. I thought we would talk about it today, but I'm happy about these teachings because we're not in a hurry. Because our objective here together is not to teach something, but is to walk together in this process of elaborating. So our objective today is to end these teachings today with the mind that says, I need someone to guide me and understand what guru means, a guru or lama. So it means also making reference to this relationship, no one higher, with not taking anything away from anyone else. It doesn't substitute. But la, written in the same way, also means life force. And ma is a negation, but it also, written in the same way, means mother. So lama means that which has no higher, but it also means the one who nourishes us with vital energy. So the guru is the one who gives us the dharma, who blesses us, who shows us the path. And one of the most important things of this relationship is when someone for whom we have tremendous respect, and we have a lot of respect, we've recognized his or her characteristics. When we see that he or she has faith in us, that is a powerful tool for us to have this confidence and trust in ourselves, faith in ourselves. If I have total faith in someone, and someone says, you can do it. And I say, no, I can't do it. No, you can do it. You can do it. And I see that the spiritual guide is fully believing in me, then I develop this belief in myself. And Buddha, the only reason why he transmitted everything he did is because he had belief. He believed in those whom he transmitted these teachings, and then they went on to transmit it. When Lam Rim Chen Mo came to the West, at the beginning he came and he said, okay, let me learn about this reality, and he taught the mantra of Buddha Shakyamuni, the four for the 4 limitless meditations, and then he added 3 more to those. The white Tara practice, really not much. And after 10 years, he decided to teach. He said, I've know you. I've learned about you, and I I trust that you really can bring about this, you can carry this lineage, this tradition, and realize these teachings. And the reason why he stayed here so long and traveled the world without, tirelessly, and the only reason is because he had total belief, total trust in all of us. And the only reason why I'm here is because I have deep belief, deep trust into each one of you. Belief that you can do it, really. And when we have a spiritual guide, when we have this deep trust and belief and love, and we have this belief in him or her, and then it's mutual, and they have in us, this really helps us when we receive that unconditional love. That helps us to have unconditional love towards ourselves. When we allow ourselves to be loved unconditionally, that helps us love ourselves unconditionally. So, just repeating one more time, the Guru is not our savior. But is someone without whom we cannot save ourselves. He's not someone who carries us, but is the one who shows us the path for us to walk on. It's this relationship that we need to create. Lama Tsongkhapa had more than 100 gurus, and at the last part of his life, his main guru was a being who wasn't even in his physical, didn't have a physical body. He was actually the Buddha of wisdom, Manjushri. There are many different manifestations of a guru. It's said that a Buddha can take on many manifestations as a person, as an animal, as a tree. Sometimes we think that a Buddha needs to be a religious figure within this tradition and this in this specific way. So the one who has this title, is the one who will manifest as a Buddha. Instead, no. If we have the openness to see that we gradually will get to this place that we will be led by many different manifestations. I just share this one little story. I hope it'll create clarity. There's a text, I can't even share it, that really touched me deeply. It's written by a master. It was a master of one of the masters of Lama Ganchen. It was Je Tsong Rinpoche. He was very direct. He taught Lama Ganchen a lot of the healing techniques. He was very well known for being very direct. And to give you an idea, one day during the self-initiation of Yamantaka, and at a certain point in the visualization, we visualize at one's heart the Vajra, this object here at the heart, this white Vajra on a white moon disk, so which represents the wisdom and compassion within oneself. And there's this visualization during the practice. And at that moment of visualization, someone poured tea at the wrong time, and the Lumse, the 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 chant leader, saw the tea. He he saw the tea that was getting cold, and so he recited the tea offering. Instead, one normally they should recite this after such a visualization. And instead, he said, okay, we don't want to drink cold tea. So during the practice, at a certain point, he's during the practice, and then they're about to drink the tea. Tsong Rinpoche said, he said, now take your dorje, take your dorje, and take the dorje from your heart and dip it in the tea and snack on that. I mean, he was very, very direct. It said that he was trying to hold back, but he just said that. Anyway, in 1981, in the West, there were many. There was this many interviews were there were many interviews about the masters, and the one that I found only one I found interesting was the interview with Tsong Rinpoche. So there are people that have good spiritual practices. They have knowledge, not fully enlightened, and then they get recognized, and in their reincarnation, they get recognized. He said there are some cases where there are people that are fully realized that choose a human body, or they choose a gross body to be reborn in to help other beings. This is a tulku. And in this text, he says, one of my masters, whose name I've forgotten, he said, he in this story, said there was a master, and the attendant brought him tea in the morning, and this master was laughing, and he said, "Why are you laughing? Why?" And he insisted. He said, "Oh, because there two of my emanations are beggars. The two of my emanations are beggars, and they finally got some good food, but then these stray dogs have taken the food away, and so they're running after these stray dogs." He's laughing about this, and the attendant said, how many emanations do you have? And he said, "I don't know, I need to think about this. I'll tell you tomorrow." The following day, he said, "Okay, I looked inside, and I was able to recognize about 200 emanations of mine." This would be a super multitasker. I mean, this is the maximum level of multitasking. A being who's able to manifest himself in more than one coarse body, and this goes beyond our level of understanding. But it's said that there are beings who are highly realized that can manifest in different ways. But even if all of them got together here in front of us, all of them in front of us, wanting to take us out of samsara, to show us how to reach Buddhahood, they wouldn't be able to do it if we didn't do our side, our part. It's only by interacting with us that we are able to transform inside. So this, from our side, we need to stay open be open to the idea that there are many, many beings that are highly realized and they can manifest themselves in a formal way, as a lama, as a guru, or in an informal way. It can be a grandmother. It can be an animal, a person that we meet in some place. But there are these beings that have this ability to guide us, really guide us along our process of growth. when we rely or entrust ourselves formally, it's very, very important that we take the time to really strengthen this relationship. It's like before getting married, we really need to take time to get to know each other, because when we, quote unquote, let's say, marry our spiritual guide, we choose a spiritual guide, it is possible to divorce, but then it's said that it's very, very difficult to recreate trust in others. That's why it said that once we rely on a spiritual guide, even if it happens at a certain point, we see that person, what that what that person can teach us, it doesn't. Even if that person doesn't, what that person can teach us doesn't touch us like it did before. That's not a reason to go against that that master. So at that point, one can create and rely on another spiritual guide. So before we formalize this relationship, so we need to really take the time, and without relying on a spiritual guide, it is practically impossible to grow along the path. Seru Geru Tambe. Rang means himself. Gyal is victorious. So it's saying that he who is able to be victorious over himself, like with reach enlightenment by himself, is like a rhinoceros who is a solitary animal. It's said that some beings there are people who from life to life are able to follow a spiritual practice without a guide, but this is extremely rare and very slow. Those who are called with this name. So for the most of us, we need to be able to rely correctly on a spiritual guide, and this is the first step. And this already means so much when we're able to do this, when we're able to do it well. It's said, let's imagine a boat that was built outside the water. Bringing the boat to the water is difficult. Once the boat is in the water, it goes more easily. So it's said that trying to before actually relying on a spiritual guide is like pushing a boat that's out of the water, that's on dry land. And with this, we will conclude today. Let's do our dedications. This afternoon there'll be, we will have teachings tomorrow, and then the day after tomorrow, this afternoon, there'll be Lama Caroline.
Dragun namda shingla chepar sho ye dam guru ratna mindrala kam niryata yami Je Tsong Lame kutse raptenchi nam karatinle chokchur gepadam losan tempe drume sasumki drove munsel taktu ne gyurchi kewa kuntu yanda lamada drame chike pela longche ching sada lamge yunte rabzone dorje change kopa nyurtop sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shing delek pe kuncho sumke chingelo kuncho sumke ngodrubutsol kuncho sumke trashisho.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to receive all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Bon appétit.
Have a good lunch.